So this session, keeping your cool while coaching, really came out of the work that I've done as a coach and the work that I've been able to do coaching other coaches. What I realized quickly when I started coaching is that instructional expertise was not really enough to get through my work with teachers. There's always questions or emotions that arose that hindered me from being able to really get to the real instructional work that needed to be done. And I realized quickly that I needed to learn to navigate that better when I worked with teachers. In this session, I'm going to share with you 4 practical steps to help you develop habits in response to teachers' emotions that can help you keep your cool while coaching. So I'm going to share with you 4 practical steps that will help you handle emotional situations as a coach. And by the end of the session, you'll be able to create new habits that will help you keep your cool while coaching. We're going to talk about these 4 steps as a process for how you handle emotional situations when they come at you strongly or when you are literally faced with someone else's emotions right in front of you. So the 4 steps, just as a quick preview here, are that you watch from the balcony, focus on listening, process and circle back, and find the runners. And I know from my own personal experience that these 4 steps will help you keep your cool while coaching in emotional situations. I've used them in my own coaching, and I've helped other coaches use them in similar situations. And I've really just seen the fruit of this process. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about you and who you are. So I know you. I know that you were a great classroom teacher. You were always prepared. You worked so hard. You went above and beyond. Your students made great progress, and you could get students places that other people really couldn't. I know that about you because that's why you're a coach. You showed so much promise in the classroom that you wanted your energy, that they wanted your energy to overflow into the other teachers in the school. So they came to you and they said, "Hey, we've got this opening. Would you like to coach? Would you like to come into this new role?" And at first, you really just weren't sure. You didn't know if you wanted to leave the classroom. You love your students. You love your work. You are good at what you do. Yeah, I'm just not really sure at first. But at the same time, you knew that you could help teachers and you had a lot to offer. And you could ultimately impact more students if you were doing coaching. So you really wanted to affect that change in your district or in your school, and you were excited about the possibilities that it could bring. So, you said yes, but it probably wasn't long into your coaching that you realized that this was a little bit harder than you expected it to be, because coaching adults really isn't easy. It isn't as much like coaching students and teaching students as we thought. So what works with students doesn't necessarily work with adults. And as you're trying to do this work, you're surprised by how often you're faced with resistance and high levels of emotions from teachers, because emotions run really high with adults, and resistance and change can be really strong sometimes. So we feel like all of a sudden everybody hates us and we've only been doing this job for a few months, or you're feeling angry a lot of the time because the teachers aren't doing what you have asked them to do. And you really don't understand that as a coach, because you would always do in your classroom what was best for students, and you worked so hard to do that. And so you're always wondering, why don't these teachers just want to do what's best for students? I don't understand. They should just do it. It's really a confusing feeling. And that's what we're going to talk about today. 4 steps to keeping your cool. Those 4 steps will help you get past these strong emotions that you're being faced with and really help move towards the progress of what you wanted to see, why you came into the role in the first place. And I felt this way as a coach myself. It's really quite normal. And I've worked closely with other coaches who have experienced this. And what we find is that you have to really get past these emotions. And through a lot of trial and error, I figured out these 4 steps that we're going to talk about today. And they've worked for me, and I've seen change happen because of them. So I think that this approach can really work for you. So the thing is that Daniel Goleman has done a lot of research on emotional intelligence, and he's revealed that people skills and emotional intelligence actually account for 80% or more of your success as a leader. And this is a really important realization for us as coaches, because what it means is that the instructional skills and teaching expertise that you got into this coaching position with aren't actually the skills that you need to be a successful coach. Your instructional expertise alone is not going to be enough to help others embrace change, which is really what you're trying to do as a coach. And honestly, we can't even get to the instructional improvements that we want to see until we can help people overcome their fears around change and the new instruction that they're being asked to embrace. So the more effective coach out of coach A and coach B here on this slide is actually the one who embraces emotions and has strategies in her back pocket to manage her own emotions and to help people process their emotions. So these skills that we're going to learn today in this session, they will elevate you as a coach above others who are simply relying on instructional expertise to move people forward and change, because that's not what moves people forward. So if you feel like you are right now relying on your instructional expertise, it's not going to be enough. It isn't to help people make change. So we've got to really hone in on the emotional intelligence side of things. And that's where we can use these 4 steps. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the swirl. It's all of the emotions. We're going to call it the swirl. And I define the swirl as any kind of drama, stress, or negativity that hinders coaching or gets in the way of coaching being productive. The swirl, as we've just discovered, is really actually just people's brains and having a remote emotional reaction to change that is in those hard situations that they really don't want to face. Once you have this idea of the swirl in your mind and understand what's really going on behind the emotions, you're going to be able to see the swirl more clearly when it comes walking your way. And then you can identify it and you can respond to it using the 4 steps that we're going to work on today. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the swirl and make sure you understand what is a swirl and what is not a swirl. There's a key difference between swirling teachers and then some who are actually just kind of venting and processing out loud. When you're experiencing a swirl, you're experiencing venting strong emotions over and over again from the same teacher about the same thing. And the key difference is that there's no response to coaching and there's no efforts to change and solve the problem. There's just a whole lot of talking going on, or whining going on, or complaining going on, or all of the things. So that is when you have swirling, when things are going round and around and around and they never seem to land anywhere. You know that a teacher is caught in a swirl, even if she sometimes sounds like she's trying to change, if you don't see any productive change going on. On the other hand, you have some teachers who are processing with you. They're trying to think out loud with you, and then they are able to take action. They're willing to listen to some coaching or some advice, and then they turn around and they take action. They're trying to solve the problem. Even if it was a little bit negative on the front end, those teachers are just processing versus swirling. So the 4 steps are a process. So you're going to start with the first one, and you're going to move all the way down. And that's how you're going to respond to this type of emotion when it comes your way. So the first one we're going to talk about is how we can watch from the balcony. And then we're going to talk about focus on listening, which is listen and note. We're going to talk about how we process and circle back, and then how we find the runners. And those are going to be our 4 tips for keeping our cool while coaching. And those are going to be steps that are going to help you get where you want to go. So step number 1 is to watch from the balcony. I want you to take a minute and imagine that you are on your favorite balcony. Close your eyes, see if you can find something. This is your favorite balcony that maybe is in a beautiful theater that you love, or maybe you went on an amazing trip and it has this amazing view. So many different things. In my mind, I have a beautiful balcony overlooking the beach where my husband and I had an opportunity to get away one weekend. And that is just a beautiful place. This is going to be your safe place. This is going to be that place that you kind of escape to when the emotions come on you really strong. Think of a tornado that's coming at you that you need to hide from. And when you're going to hide, you're going to run up to the balcony. You want to mentally walk yourself up to the balcony and watch a conversation unfold. If you are faced with an emotional swirl and it comes at you, you want to go up to that balcony and pretend that you are watching everything from afar on the stage happening in front of you. You're going to allow yourself to detach from those personal emotions of that person in front of you, and realize some really important things. You're going to remember that the person that is in front of you is having a fight or flight reaction to the change that's being asked of them. This is not someone who's upset with you or something that you've done. It's actually something that's going on in their brains that is going to try and resist the fact that they're being asked to change. And you can detach yourself emotionally from them while you let them share and process their thoughts out loud, because you know that they're not actually emotionally frustrated at you. Now, they might say something that makes it imply that they're mad at you, but what's really happening is that they are just trying to figure out how to get to do the least amount of work, because that's how their brain is happy, in their happy place. You are not responsible for other people's emotions. This is really, really important. And it's why you're allowed to go to the balcony. Once you're on the balcony, you can step away and realize that this is not my emotions. This is the other person's emotions. They are in front of me. They are swirling, and I need to take a deep breath and detach. You will still be listening. We'll talk about that part in a second. But it may be hard to embrace at first because but once you understand that source of their emotions, their emotional reaction to change, you can give them the freedom to be emotional and you don't have to engage with it. Remember that your urgency is not my emergency. I always love that one, because really sometimes coaching is a lot about taking on other people's urgency. So in regard to that, you just want to find ways to respond kindly to what is in front of you without engaging in the swirl or the negativity. And this is the hard part, because the instinct is to agree with them or to tell them that, oh, I know, me too. And if you can find a way to stay out of the negativity and out of the swirl, you will really get yourself in a better mindset to keep cool. You want to prepare a few responses, back pocket responses for how you are going to face these swirl moments. Wow, that sounds really hard. Do you think we can find a time where we can talk about that next week? Or is there anything positive we can find in this situation? Or are there any solutions you can think of? Just anything that's in your back pocket that can kind of move them towards the next step and away from the emotions. But at the same time, you don't want to coach into the emotional swirl when it's swirling. We're going to talk about when you coach into it. At this point, you just respond kindly. You have a quick response so you can get out of the conversation and allow the negativity to pass. What you really want to make sure you don't do is pull out your advice monster. We really need to keep that in the drawer. The ugly advice monster really can't be of any help right now, because this person is in a swirl, which is a very high level of emotion, and they're not going to accept any advice from you right now. So don't give any. Do everything you can not to start giving advice. And then there will be a time and place for you to give advice and to coach into this person and lead them in the right direction. But this moment right here at the height of their swirl, it's really not the moment. So try hard not to give any advice and to keep your mouth shut. Once you're ready, we're going to talk about step 2, which is focus on listening. You're going to put yourself in a listening stance and really move away from giving advice, like we said, and get up on that balcony and stay there and just listen. Watch the performance happen in front of you. So listen is the best thing. Listening is the best thing you can do to help keep your cool when the swirl comes. When you focus on listening, you will actually free yourself from the need to respond or argue with the person in front of you. And that allows you to keep your emotions in check, because you're not going to say anything, so your emotions can't come out of your mouth. So all you can do is listen. It helps you keep your cool, so you're not thinking about all the things you want to be saying, even though you probably still are. At least you're trying to keep them in your mind. And it will kind of free you from that frustration, because you can take a listening stance knowing that you don't have to respond to whatever this is that's in front of you. You are just going to listen, and you're going to show that person that you're listening. One of the things that really helps me is this quote from James. the brother of Jesus, and he says that you should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. I like the rhythm of it because I like to repeat it in my head whenever I am trying to get on that balcony and get into a listening stance. And be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because there's really no reason to be angry if you don't have to respond and all you're doing is listening. You can, if you can get your head around these three phrases, you're going to be able to choose how you want to respond to people's emotions. And that will help you keep your cool in a really powerful way. So the goal is to stop yourself from talking. You want to be curious and genuinely interested in what they're saying and show that in your body language. You want to take the pressure off yourself to respond so that you are not going to engage in anything that's being said. You're just listening. If you ask a question, you want to ask a question that you're sure is going to prompt them to keep talking. Things like, tell me more about that, or let me repeat back to you what I heard you say, and see if they will continue talking so that you can continue listening. One really important piece of focusing on listening is taking notes. And I know most of you really walk around with a notebook already in your hands, so maybe it will be easy for you to just pull that out and write down some of the things that are being said. You want to tell the teacher that you're writing down these things, these concerns that she is having, so that you can help her solve it. It might have two immediate effects. Number one, it's going to let that teacher know that she is being heard because you are actively listening, and active listening includes writing things down. But it also helps them realize that you're writing down the things that she's saying, so she might consider that her negativity is too strong, and it might help her to back down just a little bit if you say to her, let me write down what you're saying so that I can think about this and help you. If you don't have the option to write in that immediate moment, maybe you got caught in the hallway or something like that, go back and write down as much as you can remember of the conversation as soon as possible, because you'll need that information for one of our next steps. So step 3 is process and circle back. And again, these steps happen in order. So you are faced with a swirl. You start by listening to someone, but being detached by watching in the balcony, listening with a lot of intentional thinking, and then taking notes while you're listening. And now you're going to work on processing and circling back. And one of the things you need to do to end that conversation when they come to you with a swirl is be sure to ask for another meeting. Get a way in again when the emotions are not running as high. So you can say something like, thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. It's very insightful and helpful to know what you've been thinking about. Let me have some time to think about this and I'll get back to you. When are you available to meet next week? Let me talk to so-and-so about this and see if I can get some more information. Find a way to show that you are going to actively do something in response to their emotions, but you are also going to have to come back later to talk about this again, not necessarily be able to solve their problem right away, which is usually what they want you to do. So when you do this, when you step away from this conversation, you need to process your own emotions first. You need to kind of get real with yourself and think about where you are, where your heart is with this person and what has just happened and all of those things. So usually writing is a good way to do that. Just thinking about what happened, processing your emotions, rereading those notes and seeing what you find there and what's in your heart. And just remember that if you are feeling angry and frustrated, then you really need to be introspective about why you're feeling angry and frustrated, because you need to try to establish the reason behind your own emotions so that you can move past those, so that you can think about helping the person across from you. So then another thing you want to do is identify the real concern. There is a Disney blog about this idea of the cast members often are asked the question at Disney right before the parade, what time does the 3 o'clock parade start? Wait, what kind of question is that? What time does the 3 o'clock parade start? The question just answered the question. And so instead of answering the question with the blunt answer, which is, well, of course it starts at 3 o'clock, the cast members are encouraged to remember that they really aren't asking what time the parade starts. They're really asking things like, where can I see it best? When does it come right here? When does it come where we're standing? Who am I going to see on the parade? So to actually realize that even though there is one question being asked out of their mouth, the real question is actually hiding underneath. So we like to use this as a little, what's the 3 o'clock question prompt, where you really start thinking about the real concerns. Often what people bring to you on the surface is not really the concern, which is another reason why we have to understand the brain and how the brain works behind the scenes. So as you're thinking about the real concern, you can ask these questions as you're processing through what happened. So is the emotion in front of you really the response to the emotion, the thing that was brought up, the actual issue? Are there other underlying issues? What is the obvious answer that this person is avoiding? As a coach, it's very important to know the answer to that question, because you're going to have to coach them towards the obvious answer, and they don't want to go there. So it's good to identify that. What's the real reason for their emotions? Is there anything personal going on that may be causing these emotions to run high? Sometimes you don't know what's going on in somebody's personal life, but if you can dig a little bit deeper, when you're doing your own reflecting and processing, you might find where some of these underlying issues are. And that will help you to do the next piece of this process and circle back step, which is circle back. You can't leave an emotional situation, an emotional encounter just to be left. You can't leave it. You have to find a way to circle back. And one of the things you'll do when you circle back is re-engage and see if you can help get this person to a place where they're willing to change. So when you're circling back, you want to think about how you're going to prompt them with questions to see if they can get to their own solution. This is a really important piece of coaching. If you haven't really landed on this yet, then you may still be in the place where you're in the training mindset, where you're trying to train somebody to do it the way that they're expected to do it. Coaching is not about training. It's actually about questioning and getting them to do their own thinking. And that means that you've got to be ready to prompt them with questions. And they're not like leading questions that are like, hey, where do you think we should go with this? No, they're questions that really allow that person to do the deep thinking. And all you are doing is being the catalyst for change by asking the questions. You want to, if you feel like you need to, you can offer some clear solutions that are small and have manageable steps. And again, that helps with that brain overload that we know that emotional people are probably experiencing right now. The smaller the steps, the better. When you think the step is small, step backwards one more step and make it even smaller. Because honestly, usually as coaches, we're pretty fast moving and we get things pretty quickly. And you have to remember that not everybody can work at your pace. I have to remember that all the time. So you want to gauge their willingness to change and their emotional response to change. Remember, to get out of the swirl, they have to accept that they need to change and then start making changes. Small changes are acceptable, but changes have to happen. So you want to start to gauge whether or not they're coming out of the swirl or if they're staying in the swirl, and you need to disengage again, process, and circle back again until you've gotten to a place where they are really starting to make the change that you're hoping to see. Our last step is step number 4. This one is my favorite, I must say, and it is find the runners. You are going to love this because it gives you so much permission, and it's very exciting when you start to find and identify your runners. So this idea comes from Ron Clark and his book, Move Your Bus. You have to get this book. It is so good. Ron Clark is amazing. He started a school in Atlanta for middle school kids, and he's done such great work. If you haven't heard of him, you really need to Google Ron Clark Academy. So who's on your bus is what he talks about in this book. He says, imagine that you have a bus and the engine is the feet of the people in your organization. And the only way that it can move forward is if everyone is moving the bus through their feet. So you have on the bus these different people. You have your runners, your joggers, your walkers, your riders, and your driver. So your runners are the people who are in your organization, who are working the hardest, who are going above and beyond, who are always trying to do the next thing and get better. They are the ones who are just pushing and pushing, and they're always just doing everything at extremely high level. But he also talks about how if you pour into the runners, if you pour into the strong teachers who are working so hard, who are doing everything well, who are always willing to grow, if you're the one who's pouring into them, it only takes a little bit of pouring into them, of encouraging them, of letting them know they're doing a great job, of giving them a resource or taking them to a PD. Just a little bit of encouragement for a runner will help fuel them to run so much more and so much faster towards the goal. So ultimately, your bus is going to move faster if your runners keep running and if your runners keep running fast. And that's actually how you start to move your organization and change it. That's what he talks about in the book. It's so great. But you start to equate it to your school and you start looking at the people who is around you and who you're coaching, you might want to start thinking about this framework, because if you are focusing on the riders, possibly the ones who are swirling all the time and who never back away and who are just always swirling and never changing, those are probably your riders and your walkers. And if you spend so much time outpouring into them, you're only going to get their feet down on the ground. But if you move your emphasis to working with the runners, if you pour your time and energy into them, you are going to get a much bigger payoff in the end. Another piece of this is the partnering. So if you actually, start coaching this person and you partner with them, you're going to have that progress and you're going to be able to report that back to your principal too and say, well, even though I'm not making great progress with blank because he's a rider, I am making great progress with this runner, and he's really making good progress and we're seeing this change. So you can show the difference in progress as well as you're trying to kind of report those things back. Also, working with the runners is a way for you to kind of set some boundaries around these swirlers and these riders who are holding things back. You want to go and re-engage with them, with the emotional people, if an opening presents itself. But the truth is if they don't respond and they're not making changes, and you're not feeling like they are really, coming out of their emotional swirl towards change, then you really can set boundaries. You're allowed to set those boundaries and stop working with that person so that you can go work with a runner instead. And that allows you to really have permission to focus where you're going to be able to make an impact and support. So our 4 steps to really help you keep your cool while coaching, as a quick recap, is for you to head up to that balcony and watch from the top, detach yourself emotionally, focus on listening and listen in that listening stance with an open heart and an open mind. Take some notes because you're going to need to process and circle back around with that teacher and see if you can make an impact when you do, to see if you can move them out of the swirl and towards change. And then while you're doing all of that, make sure you go find a runner. Go find somebody that is going to give you energy and that you are going to be able to give energy to, who is going to give ultimately energy to the whole organization because of who you're pouring into. So all of those things will really help you to keep your cool and to really help you stay balanced while you're faced with some heavy emotional pieces.